So imagine you have a patient who is very close to death, having to go through that stack of consent form and understand what the hell they're talking about. That's stage in my life, my illness, that I just thumbed to the back page and signed it. Now let me ask you a question. Is that consent?
No. So, hello everyone. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties, whoever's waiting for us to, get started. But now that we're all, through all the humps and the loops and everything, we're now back. And who I have today is Mary Burrell. And she did not her story, I've know a little bit of a background and we're going to go more in depth. But, after Mary did not just get out to become a heart disease advocate, but she was just trying to survive. After being diagnosed with, severe tricuspid valve regurgitation and, things like that. She graduated from hospice care and she enrolled into the study, and she has a lot more story for us to tell about her perspective and her journey. And I'm more excited to know more into it. So, hi, Mary. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me and try to, give your perspective on the clinical research. And maybe I'll give the floor to you. How do you want to introduce yourself to our audience? And we'll go from there.
Good morning, Dipali, and thank you. I am thrilled to be part of your podcast today. I'm Mary Burrell, and I live in the Seattle area. Um, I spend my days advocating. That's what fills my heart these days.
Nice. And Mary, I know you probably would. Do you want to start off with how your journey started? What made you get into an advocacy, and where did everything start?
It started for almost 4 decades ago. I was diagnosed with an idiopathic lung disease
Okay.
called fibrosing mediastinitis. Battling that disease for 3 decades led to heart disease, congestive heart failure, and most recently, I was diagnosed with torrential tricuspid valve regurgitation.
I see.
Because because surgery wasn't an option for me and medications were no longer working, I entered into hospice and I spent 2 years fighting for my life in hospice. I remember many days sitting on my back deck. I dubbed it Mary's therapy room because I spent all my waking hours on that deck being grounded. I remember watching the sun rays hit
Right.
the leaves and the breeze would make them shimmer. The breeze would make them wave in, and the sunlight hitting the leaves, just all these details that I was paying attention to. And I remember making little promises. If you let me make it through this, if I can just make it till, all these little promises, not
Right.
realizing that I would maybe not even be here. So I have a great cardiologist. He has pulled me out of several sticky spots. And so he referred me to a clinical trial. Before this point, yes, I had heard of clinical trials. I didn't know much other than the basics, the very basics.
Uh-huh.
But at that point in my life, DePauli, I had no choice. It was like, yes, I was grasping at anything that might even help. So I applied twice for this trial and I had to travel out of state to get there. I was denied both times. I was not a qualified candidate because the annulus where my tricuspid valve sits was so enlarged that it would not fit the new valve.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, you go through these tests, you come home and you're waiting on pins and needles only to find out
You did not qualify.
I'm not a candidate. So
Right.
the second time when I went in to qualify, they diuresed me. They hooked me up to the IV and forced diuresed me, hoping that if I could lose less water, then of course the annulus would shrink.
Right.
And so I went home again. I didn't get the answer right away. I went home a little bit later. I got the call. It worked, but not enough to shrink the annulus to fit the new
It's like
valve.
this. Right.
So here I was again. At that point, after the second no, I remember sitting in my cardiologist's office. It was a regular follow up visit. And I told him, I don't feel like I'm going to last much longer.
Mhm.
What is it going to be like for me to die? I started asking him those hard questions that we face when we are so close.
Right.
And I was so close to death's door, I could smell it.
Oh my God.
So I started asking him these questions. And when he was ready to, when he was trying to respond to my difficult questions, my phone rang, and it was actually the doctor from the research hospital calling to tell me that they figured it out and they got me approved.
That's
And I want to
amazing.
share something that I didn't know at the time that now, since I'm advocating, I've learned is that they went back to all the previous patients and learned from their procedures and then brainstormed how they could help me. It's so important that we participate in these studies because had those patients not participated, they wouldn't have had any reference to go by to
Yeah.
help me.
Right.
So that's basically how I found out about the trial leading up to and going through the trial. I had my procedure January 11th of 2021, and I immediately felt the difference coming out of the medicine.
Hmm.
I could laugh and talk at the same time, laugh and breathe at the same time. It was, and it's why I'm sharing that, Dipali, is to me, that was like powerful because I realized at that time that my body automatically stopped me from laughing because I couldn't breathe too. And so when that hit me, it was like, wow, yeah, I was that girl. So coming out of it took, we don't talk about this piece enough, and this is the mental piece. So yes, I got my valve fixed, but the valve is fixed. I still have all this other stuff happening,
Right.
right? Um, and so I look at the struggle that I had post procedure was tumultuous. And I look at that because it's probably because I had went be- so far to the other side before I got fixed that it took my body a little longer to bounce back. So the procedure was in January. By September, it felt like somebody literally reached inside me and flipped the switch. I was back. I was okay. Well, not okay, but better. I was physically able to do more things.
I see.
When did advocacy come into play for me? Was during those 2 years post procedure. I was in depression and didn't realize it.
Hmm.
I was struggling and had no idea. I just thought it was part of recovering. I didn't tie it together. When I had the privilege of meeting the medical engineers who created the valve that's keeping me alive, and I heard my story from their lens,
Wow.
blew me away. Blew me away. Because going into that meeting, I felt our world is full of sick people. I am not the only sick person in this world. I'm not the only one struggling. So, that was my attitude, my mental state at that point. But coming out of that meeting, and I heard them tell me, well, Mary, why we struggle was because your heart is shaped like an avocado,
Hmm.
and we're trained on book text, right? On textbook heart. Um, and then I learned about the annulus being too big and the problems that just that personal connection,
Hmm.
talking about me and
Hmm.
my heart was left me feeling like more patients need this experience.
Right.
More if more patients could talk to these people and get a clearer understanding of what's going on,
Hmm.
it makes a difference. It did for me. It made a huge difference.
Right.
So leaving that meeting, I was changed person. I was not the same person walking into that meeting that for the person walking out. I I am being led. That's the best way I can say it. I had no plan to advocate. I had no business plan, no, you know,
Right.
chart, no
Yeah.
flow chart, nothing like that to
Yeah. It's just a natural awakening in a way that it just kind of leads you to that path. And,
yes,
it
yes.
just made you think about it. Just stop for a moment and think what other people are going through. This is amazing, Mary. I think what I'm hearing, and just so you know, as you were saying, I have a lot more curiosity than what I already had before I started this episode. And I'm going to try and unfold all within this one next, 40 to 45 minutes, hopefully. But first thing I want to ask you is, and I'm going in the beginning of your introduction, like you only know the basics of the clinical research. And I know your health journey now, like it was like one after the another, and then now you're hitting the, bare bottom and completely there is no other option. Can you tell me, or can you walk me through about what your knowledge was then, and once you are into the study, like what are the things that you came to know is like, oh, this can also happen in the research, or this is what you expected? Maybe walk me through that knowledge part. Like, what did you know before? What do you know now?
What I knew before was clinical trials meant I was a guinea pig.
Right. And I hear that. I honestly hear that from a lot of patients. As soon as they hear clinical trial research studies, they completely was like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to hear it. Let other people do it. And we'll wait until it gets approved. So that's the thing. It's almost a taboo. And yeah, but I will let you tell me what more about it.
So when my doctor mentioned that to me, there was no second thought. Just do it. Call right now. Do the urgent referral. I'll talk to my family later. Post procedure, knowing what I know now,
Hmm.
I know a lot more. I
Right.
know that clinical trials desperately need help. Um, I know that um, research is important for everyone, not just those who are needing intervention,
Hmm.
but maybe those who don't need intervention, maybe their loved one does.
Right.
It affects all of us,
Yes.
and we may not feel like it's for us, but it is. And I think that my opinion is people are listening to what they're being told, whether or not it's accurate,
Hmm.
they hold on to that.
Right.
And the old beliefs are needed. We need to be cautious about moving forward with change.
Hmm.
But I think that the missing piece is education. Patients still look at research as being guinea pigs. They don't see what's in it for them. They only
Hmm.
see what's in it for research.
Got it. Do
And
you
that's a
think,
problem.
right? And do you think that, like, the pharmaceutical company or people who are doing research like us, like, can we do something about it to, or can we do something more about it to change that, or something that you think, the other side is missing?
I personally think that patients need to be brought to the table early on.
Hmm.
I think that by doing that, the patients feel invested. They feel like they are a part of something bigger than them.
Hmm.
When we don't feel like we are part of something, then that's when we back off. And
Right.
trust is not in an ad.
Yes.
You
That.
know, I see them a lot.
Mhm.
Advertisement or we'll pay you. It's just filling up news feeds. It's not, you know. But there are, I think that if we all work together and come to the table together, that we can make big strides.
Right. Okay, so trust is important on both side. And what I'm hearing is that the more involved they are, I guess also maybe sharing more of the information to giving them an update in a time to time probably would help them to understand the difference that they're actually making by being into a clinical trial. Did I get that right?
Yes, like I can give you an example. I just completed my 5-year study.
Hmm.
I treated it like it was the most important thing in my life. I
Right.
went to all the appointments, I did what I was told, yada, yada, yada. I come to my last visit
Hmm.
and it was less than my first visit.
Wow.
So, to give you a contrast, my first visit, I was doing the 6-minute walk and I had some guy behind the counter cheering me on. Go, Mary, go, Mary. Everything cheering me
Right.
on, all but the pom poms.
Hmm.
My exit visit was 2 monotone thank yous. Thank you for participating in the trial. You have saved many lives.
Yeah, that must have felt amazing if I were to imagine.
No, coming out of it, it was like a monotone thank you for saving all these lives. I, as a patient, wanted more. How did I change lives?
Right.
Give me something to
Mhm.
hold on to
Right.
for those 5 years that I spent in the trial. Yes, I got a lot out of it. I got my
Mhm.
life, back, I got purpose, I got mission.
Right.
But what I didn't get was important to me as well.
Hmm.
How many people were saved because of my 5 years?
I
Be
see.
more specific. I don't need to know your data. I just need to know something
Got
to
it.
hold on to for those 5 years that makes me feel like I'm worthy.
Wow. This, I'll be honest, Mary, I did not think about this perspective at all. Because what I've seen is that patient feels good, but I've never seen a patient asking me, like, okay, what now? Like, how did this impact anything? Other than, pharmaceutical company getting their data and all of those. But then how did that change anything? How did it move a needle? That's a very good point. I think this is something all of our sponsors who are hearing, hopefully this would be a good kind of insight to them from a patient and from, an end kind of like consumers, that what they are looking for. That is a very good point, and I'm going to make that note. And now, I guess that's something I will change on, our side, is that whenever there is a last visit, at least I'll let my team and we will let them know that, hey, this is where the stage of that drug is right now, and it's doing this. So what's the impact? I think that's something I will now follow up with.
You think about it. You finish the cancer treatment, you get to ring that bell. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
if you are a sports team and you win, there's
Hmm.
celebration after.
Right.
The coach gets dumped on with Gatorade. Could I do that with my doctor?
Hey,
Like,
I think we should come up with that. I think that's a good idea. Maybe as a research, part of it, we should do that at the end of the visit, or the last, end of the study visits and things like that. Something should happen of that sort. Maybe that's a good point. Everybody who's listening to us will probably work on it together. So, especially my team for sure. So,
Reach out to me if you need help. I'm happy to give my input.
absolutely, that's great. So, that's a very good perspective. You're like I'm also getting to learn a lot in this. So, thank you for giving that idea and perspective. What I also wanted to dig in is your maybe let's zoom in a little bit into like when you were on that procedure, like how well did you know about that procedure? Did you already read about it? Did the team, kind of like when you were into the clinical trial? I know that there is an informed consent and all of that, but what was your feeling at the time of procedures and after and all of these tests and things like that? How do you explain that to another patient who's now scared to be part of the trial?
You mentioned the consent paperwork, and I cannot let that go without shining a light on that because that was one of the pet peeves for
Hmm.
me, right? I was so overwhelmed and stressed trying to read and understand at
Hmm.
that stage in my life, my illness, um, that I just thumbed to the back page and signed it. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that consent?
No, I want patients to understand exactly word to word and understanding what the journey is going to look like and what it is that potentially is going to happen in the study on both sides, good or bad.
So
And
I'm sure I'm not the only patient that's ever done that. I can't imagine that to be true because those consent forms need some work.
right. And can you tell me, like, are you saying like shortening it or making the language much more like understandable? Is it more like medical terminologies wise, or give me some idea?
Wordy,
Hmm.
very wordy. Get to the point.
Right.
Um, Terminology, some of it was terminology. But when you're sick and you're fighting, you don't want to have to read 2 or 3 pages. Well, in this case, it was many more than that. But um, the point I think is they need to be um, easier to understand. I don't think they do it anymore, but years ago, some of the fast food restaurants would have photos, and you
Hmm.
just have to wait, right? To whatever you wanted to order. Um, maybe more visual.
I see.
I don't
So
know. I'm only one
less
person.
wordy, get to the point, and visuals. That just helps connect dots and understanding of what it's going to look like. And
Definitely
I'm
less.
less
Yes.
wordy. Okay, that is a good point and something some sponsor who I am able to speak directly and I am telling them that this is too much for a patient to read and this is what it is. But on the other side what we also do is we make sure that whenever we give the consent to the patient, we don't hand it to them and just be like, okay, you read it. It's more of that, okay, this section is talking about overall this. This is talking about this. This is what the journey is going to look like. This is the procedure we're going to do, and things like that. So that we can verbally say to them, but at the same time they still have a time to read it, but at least that way I'm putting a frame so they understand the reference line on what that section is about. So it helps our patients to know what this study is going to look like, but it also gives them a time to read it, take it back to their family if they need to read it more thoroughly, discuss it, and all of that. But I do agree with less wordy, it would become much, much easier for patients to understand. Because from us, like when I read it, I understand it because I already have a lot of context, but patients are hearing it for the first time. So that I completely understand your point on and pictures. I haven't really thought about it, but that's a great idea. having a picture or maybe like a schema on like, this is the visit, you're going to do this, visit one, visit two, and whatever the visits are. And it just helps. Even the medication picture might help. So,
Yes.
okay, that is a really good point. And what maybe I'll get out of a little bit of clinical research and I'm again sticking by your journey, and you were at the hospice care at once. How did it feel to, and not many people get to go out of the hospice care, like, again, like there are, but like not as many. So to come out of that hospice care and be part of the real, again, the regular life and all of that, describe me that moment if you can.
Remember when I was sharing about those days on the back deck,
Mm-hmm.
being grounded in Mother Nature, making
Yes.
those promises? So how I at that time I didn't know, one, I would be here, or two, how I was going to make good on those promises.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a plan. I'm being pulled, and I started feeling like I needed to share my story. I needed to share my story for a lot of reasons, but I never thought one of those reasons was for myself.
Right.
Turns out, and I want those patients out there who may be listening to
Mm-hmm.
get this piece. I never thought that advocacy was for me until I started sharing my story. And at first, sharing my story was very emotional for me. I couldn't get through it without crying.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I still do because it's raw still. But the more I share my story, the more healing I get.
I
And
see.
I know that sounds selfish, and I'm not doing it for my self healing. I mean, I am, but I want to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's escaping me. It's gone.
Awareness.
Awareness. I want change. I
Mm.
want I want the fact that I survived 2 years in hospice and was saved by new medicine. I want my story to change, to provide change, to make change.
Right.
And that's why I started with my Second Chances as Mrs. Avocado blog. And I moved from there to my heart to heart talk podcast, just trying to reach patients. But then I felt like that wasn't enough. And
Mm-hmm.
so I created HeartBridge Collective. And that is to bring clinical trial patients in and walking with somebody else who has just walked through that same procedure with them. So they're matched. And through their journey, walking that road, um, I have found with a few of my members with HeartBridge that they want to give back too.
Mm-hmm.
They want to share their story. And it may not be to the same level that I'm sharing mine, but people need to know that you can share your story on any level and it be impactful.
Correct.
From from posting something on your Facebook page to writing a letter to Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Anything and everything you can do as a patient to move research forward is our obligation. I certainly feel that way with me. I cannot receive all of that and not do anything with it.
Yeah. That's
Did I answer your question?
You did. You have a lot more deeper, perspective, and I sometimes I also want to just hear what you have to say. Forget about the question sometimes, but no, you did answer my question. Um, Again, like this is where maybe I know I'm going around this similar topic, but I want to hear like if there is a patient sitting at home having a similar disease, scared to join a trial, what would you what would you tell them? And I'm collecting a lot of your ideas and thoughts, and you want to change. But if you were to speak to a direct patient, what would be your conversation looks like at that time?
About a clinical trial option.
Yes. Yes, because this person is now scared, has a disease, sitting home, and just being skeptical. Should I or should I not? And things like that. What would be your message to that person in that moment?
Well, I believe that not all clinical trials are for everybody. So I would suggest that they take on some education,
Right.
research, do, you know, find as much reputable, and I quote unquote, reputable information that you can, um, to judge it against what you're dealing with. Because all of our stories are similar, but so different. I would encourage them to educate themselves. I would encourage them to ask questions, and I would encourage them to stay connected to me because I have walked that road. I didn't know anything either when I started, and I've been through that process, and I'm happy to walk with them too, to
Hmm.
support them and answer their questions as they go along. Because quite often, at least for me, I had no questions in the beginning. Once I started into it, then there were other questions that came up.
Hmm.
So that's the importance of having somebody, an ally with you, to walk with you for that purpose.
Got it.
Um, I would tell them to think about history. You can't, more than likely, they're scared because of the bad history that research has. But I'd also recall them to look at seatbelts,
Hmm.
anything like that. At one time was a clinical trial. And it's here today for all of us to use because of people like myself who participated in those trials. So the only way you're going to be able to get to the point where you can say a solid yes and feel comfortable is by educating yourself.
Right. Okay. That's a great piece of advice. And do you think do you think that there are less trials, especially I know you're advocating on the heart disease and things like that. Do you think there are less trials happening right now? Or maybe, in general, like, are we not looking into it more often as we should, or more, in depth as we should? Or what is like now coming out? Like, what is your perspective on the overall, like, pharmaceutical industry and overall research and things like that?
I think that I am going back to this because I think this is the key, and that's we all have to come together to solve the problems.
Right.
Silos not going to get any of us where we need to be. And if we all come together and share what's in our brains, I think together that we can move that needle so much farther.
Right.
Not
And
all one. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It was just an afterthought. As great as there are many great doctors in this world, take the greatest doctor there is, and he still doesn't know everything.
Yes,
So
that
it's
is
going to
true.
take all of us to get together.
Yeah. And I know the heart disease in women, that's another aspect. And I feel like, do you, like, you have been advocating. What do you think, like, the most commonly that we get it wrong? Like, the women with the heart disease, should we look at it much more? Because as epidemiology, like, we see a lot more women with the heart cardiac condition compared to men, but we don't have a specific wage of like how we're evaluating. Do you see that gap at all? Like, what are your overall thoughts on it?
Um, could you rephrase your question, please?
So, more onto like the women with the heart disease, and we are much more likely to have the cardiac conditions compared to men, and it's just a scientific truth there. should we or should the industry look into it much more into a detail? Because right now the trials are not like, when we say diversity, there should be wage of that. And I know FDA keeps looking for that. So, what do you see? Because you've been into this for a long time and you're seeing it. What's your thought on it?
I You're right. I do see that a lot. And it's heartbreaking when people are screaming for help and they're not
Mhm.
being heard.
Right.
And again, I think the only way we're going to close that gap is by bridging it with everyone.
Mm.
Researchers, patients, bring us in early. Don't wait until after you've created the medicine or the device.
Right.
Bring us in while you're building these devices. And that's what
Mhm.
HeartBridge is wanting to do, is to be that bridge.
Yeah.
You know, I think think about that. If you have all the players together in one table talking about the same goal,
Mhm.
how beautiful will that be?
That's that is so good to hear. And this is one of the reasons, Mary, that even I started being much more into research, because I feel like, and that's why we even, I came back to the site, like the clinical side of it. I was more onto the pharmaceutical and the CRO side, and sitting on the C-suite when we're creating a protocol. I think we get hung on this picture perfect data that we want to have for that particular molecule. But now we forget the patient journey. We forget the other comorbidities that comes along with that. Of course, we would have an idea about it, but when we're looking at the certain data, we forget that there is a person behind. And I wouldn't say forget, but it's more like in order to get the data, I think we just forget that human factor. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to speak with more and more patients like you who can bring in that. And that is something I advocate along with you is bring in patients first, let them see what this study overall looks like. What would it be from their eyes? And what can we change about that? If there are two less assessment we can do, and if that can make their life easier, I think we should do one two less assessment. And especially when there are those exploratory part of it and not just that main core part of it, I think we can completely let that go. Do you agree with that? And, you know maybe I will keep in touch with you on this, and every time when there is a study or something, I will gather your perspective on it before it goes out.
Yeah, so if it's going to be for us,
Hmm.
then it has to be about us.
Yes.
And right now, I don't feel like, at least I can't talk about all trials, but I can talk about the specific trial I was in. And it
Hmm.
was about me. It was about, I didn't feel towards the end that it was all about me.
I see. And how so?
Well, because of the way it ended, it was like, to me, it drove home with a point. It's all about the data.
Hmm.
But without the patient, there's not going to be any data.
Right. Yeah. Maybe Mary, can you dig into it a little bit more and give me a little bit more detailed, like an example to that kind of goes along for us to understand it better. When you say it became all about data and it did not stay as like it's all about you, like an example would be nice for us to kind of like, concrete on it.
Well, to me, I felt the monotone thank yous was just about the data. They were caught up into, "Oh, this is the last trial, the last visit for her. Let's get this data."
Gotcha.
Versus had my last visit ended like it's my first visit started, a more joyous ended on a more joyous note, then I would have felt like it was more about me and my participation
Hmm.
instead of me and the data.
That's a great perspective. Okay, yeah. I now am relating to what you're saying. So this is something I think us physicians needs to remember that when we are speaking with the patients and give them an in on what's happening. And again, I think this is a reiterating our earlier point that just keep you informed on what's happening after or even while in the study. If it is a 5 year long study, let's just give them an update on, hey, we have this many patients now enrolled and it's looking good and
That
this
would
is
have
where
been
we are.
fabulous to receive a message like that halfway through, you
I
know?
see. That's a
It's like
good.
being a cheerleader through the whole thing, right? Not just at the beginning, but cheer for us as we're going through this. We are the ones living with this disease.
Yes, yes. And yeah, to be honest, like I have had a couple of patients that they ask us like, okay, how many patients do we have now in the study? Like, am I the first one? Am I the 10th one? Like, where are we? Where else the study is going on right now? Like, is it just US? Is it Europe, North America, South America, all of those area where like, okay, where else this is happening? And what kind of patient population we have. So these are the great information. And you know what? Even site can do that with the sponsor's approval on this. So this is an easy fix, but it will keep you in to the information. As you're saying, you don't need to know exact data, but you just want to know overall, like what's happening.
Yeah. We don't,
So,
yeah, we're not interested in all the numbers like you guys are. We just want to know what happened because I participated. And if there was like one of my pet peeves was there was no communication other than a phone number. And when the employee left who had that phone number, the number left too. I didn't know that. So I'm calling the number, leaving voicemails,
my
whole
God,
month goes by, what's going on, right? I go to my chart and there's no access at all in my chart. So it's like, you know? So first of all, why is my chart not working for clinical trials? They should be, right? They're always talking, I'm hearing like there's not enough manpower, not enough employees. Well, there's AI, and I'm sure AI could do some of these functions, like an email to patients saying, well, this is, you know, a quarter of the way through, and this is what's happened so far. How many patients because of you? Something,
that's true. That
and
is,
along the way.
that's a
That we
great
might
point.
help retention.
Retention is that's another pet peeve on the clinical trials, like once the patient starts and then, but I love this idea and I promise you we're going to implement this at least, it starts slow but it will get bigger. It's almost like a snowball effect. So that is something, a point taken, Mary. So just know that that's the impact you've made, at least on me, and then my organization and all of that. And hopefully other sites and patients listening to this, they can ask their provider and whoever the primary investigator is that, okay, give me the information. And they are basically asking for it, they're being heard, and things will take care of afterwards. So that is great to hear. I want to talk more and more with you now. So
Do that.
Mary, give me, how is your life today, now? And I already know what it was like, years ago. How is it now? What is the biggest change that you can tell me that the poly, this is the biggest difference and this is what I feel today compared to other days.
It's hard to name just one because my life is so full.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. I have a
Right?
3-year-old grandson who I would have never met had it not been for clinical research.
Yay. That's
Yes, yes. And he just had open heart surgery. He was born with a hole in his heart. He's doing fabulous today.
amazing.
It is. It is. Um, let's see what else. I am swimming. How can I say this? I dived headfirst into advocacy, and it's what helps me thrive every day.
Hmm.
I spend most of my days advocating in some form in supporting my HeartBridge members. Um, I get so excited when My story is being shown. You can see my map. I
Mm-hmm.
have pins, colored pins everywhere. My story is being told. And that just reinforces to me um, that people are listening and that maybe that marker on research is changing in the right direction.
Right.
Um, I go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. I walk my neighborhood. Yeah, I am the healthiest I have been in my entire life right now.
That is amazing to hear, Mary. And kudos to you. I think that zest for life and wanting to fight. And then you went through all the hoops and hurdles, and now you are where you are, which is nothing less of an inspirational, like a great. I think I will always remember you, and I'm going to keep in touch with you. So you're going to have my number, and I might just ask you for a lot of advice on, the work that we're doing, and, potentially another episode with the different, sets of like understanding on the research and the perspectives and, your new learnings out of the advocacy that you're doing. And if together, if we can make more and more messaging and noise for the industry to understand and listen, I think if we can make that impact, then that would be amazing. So I already know some of my sponsors, and the studies that we're doing, they're already going to get these questions from me. So I will make sure that they will divert to this particular episode to see exactly why I'm asking what I'm asking, so they will have that idea. So this is really great. I think it's been an amazing journey. And again, I think I will tell my team to definitely, look up to this particular episode. I think it's going to be really helpful, and my patients as well, because they do follow and they want to hear more and more patient story. So we, some of
Well,
them
I
might
hope
reach out to
that's
you.
true. I hope that that is true. I hope it's very hopeful.
Right.
Otherwise, we've wasted our time, and I don't think we've done that.
I don't think we have. And there's absolutely even the one change, one person, that's pretty much is what we're looking. And that's the idea for the humans of clinical research. And you're the true human out of it. So that's so well, thank you, Mary. This concludes. And is there any last thoughts you want to say before we go ahead and, completely conclude the podcast?
No, just, you know, educate yourself before you make any decisions.
That's a great advice. And thank you for joining me. I'll keep in touch and I'll let you know the impact of this particular conversation that we've had. This is the lesson I learned from here, and that's what I'm going to implement. So thanks.
Forward to that. Thank you so much, Dipali. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.